So people tend to think of norms as constricting and negative because they're a fence around our behavior. But like everything else in sociology, they can be powerfully positive as well. The notion of positive social norms was first described by Robert Cialdini in a testimony delivered to the Subcommittee on Research, a whole bunch of other words. Basically, he was talking about the social norms, climate change, and the energy crisis we face on September 25th, 2007. And I'm going to give you a summary of that speech. You can find the full text of the speech on the internet. Um, Cialdini is a professor of psychology and marketing at the time of the address, but we won't hold that against him. He has conducted significant research on social norms. His primary interest is an understanding of how social norms can be applied to environmental technology and conservation. As you recall, social norms are the expected behaviors attached to our social roles. They are the fence that marks the boundaries of acceptable and unacceptable behavior, and they keep the world from descending into chaos. Without them, we would plunge forever into an anomic state. Cialdini's premise is that he noticed a usual standard of practice when advocating for action was to emphasize the breadth of the problem, the hugeness of the problem, thereby overwhelming a probably willing audience. That is, the common practice is to lament about how bad a situation is. We'll refer to that as the Chicken Little statement. His hypothesis was to take a different approach by applying an opposite logic when communicating to the general population about the issues. That is, the very real progress that has been made so far and toward the resolution. He cited 4 very real examples. The first was an example in the Petrified Forest National Park in Arizona. They had a sign hanging to discourage people from picking up souvenirs of petrified wood in this forest. The Chicken Little sign read, "Our heritage is being vandalized, 14 tons a year being carried out of here." The consequence is people think, well, I better get my piece now. The truth is that less than 3% of visitors were ever taking anything at all. His second example was teen suicide prevention programs. He noted that the reports of teen suicide, which are absolutely horrifying and alarming, created a situation where more teens who saw the media reports of this and heard about the accounts began to be more likely to see suicide as an option in their lives rather than the opposite. The Chicken Little message was that suicide is an option out of one's troubles as well as a way to get attention. In truth, suicide is a social act that usually occurs in clusters for both teens and adults. So one event would spark off a bonfire of other events. Cialdini also noticed that following an incident of school violence and gruesome reporting on the media, more incidences occur. The Chicken Little message was that by reporting rates and the horrors after an incident, especially with vivid TV and internet images, then other unstable people would become copycats in the behavior as a way to get attention. The fourth example was tax evasion. Every once in a while, the IRS and government decry the frequency of tax evasion and its detriment to the country. The Chicken Little message is that tax evasion is widespread, and then they do a big crackdown. In truth, tax cheating increases in the year following a crackdown, not decreases. So hearing about all these supposed incidents makes people do it more. His point was that humans are social animals and fundamentally crowd followers, the sheepality of man, as it were. The claims I just cited are all true and well-intentioned, and the latent consequences is in the subtext, a powerful and very undercutting message that says, look at all the people doing this. I should be doing it too. Cialdini's claim is that there's a better, more efficient way to proceed with much better results. He proposed a 2-step solution. First, to be diligently accurate in all communication with the public regarding the issues at hand. Don't make it overblow it. Don't underrate it. And then state unequivocally that the many bad deeds are being performed by a small minority of people. The subtext here is that you are already in the in crowd. As an example, research shows that very few people actually litter intentionally, but even one gum wrapper, one cigarette butt, one Safeway bag wrapped around a tree in your neighborhood really damages the scenery and how we feel about where we live. It causes us to lose sense of respect and caring and to get sloppy about our own littering. Then more litter collects and even more, and then we get the mistaken impression that we all litter all the time and it becomes contagious. So Cialdini proposes that instead we say, we are not a community of despoilers. We'll clean up this mess together. We all take care of this. And an example of that is the cleanup day in Alaska every May, where all over communities all over the state are cleaning up the mess. And then for quite a while afterwards, things until the next really big windstorm, things stay pretty clean. And then as a second step, instead of assuming that people don't care, and this is really important, assume they do. Furthermore, marginalize and ostracize those that clearly don't care and celebrate every progress made, every small victory, and say, no, 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 things are really good. And a way to do this, I heard some people talking about an event that happened recently that, a mass killing in a public event thing, and not the Las Vegas one. I think it was the truck in New York that barreled over people, and people were freaking out about it. And I said, yeah, but think of all the communities all over the country where people are not doing that. And that's what we have to focus on. And that's what we have to remind people, they need to behave like that. So he followed up with an experiment to the petrified forest. The park hung up 2 new signs to replace the old one. They had both very different wording, but both had a "don't take wood" message. The first sign showed 3 thieves lurking off. The response from visitors encountering that sign was that they were 3 times more likely to steal than from the original sign. The second sign showed only 1 thief lurking off, and visitors seeing this sign were half as likely to steal than with the original sign. So Cialdini's conclusion, and this is a quote, "The secret is to avoid validating the deviant actions of a small minority of wrongdoers by making them appear to be the rule rather than the exception." They were not the rule. They were the exception. They were the 5% on the negative tail of the normal curve that were doing it. The rest of us are not doing that. In other words, don't give them the credit. Don't give them the power. And otherwise, we will be assured that a few rotten apples will spoil the whole barrel. And here's another experiment. The San Marcos Water Survey in San Marcos, a small community in Southern California, they were trying to conserve water during a drought. I don't know which one. They're always having a drought down there. Cal State San Marcos conducted a survey and found that people in a neighborhood were more likely to start conserving water if they knew or even thought that their neighbors were conserving water. It didn't matter if their neighbors were or not. It was the perception that mattered. They wanted to be in the in crowd. Again, the sheepality of man. Another experiment has to do with hotel towels, and I'm sure you've probably seen this if you've been in a hotel in the last 10 years. There's cards inviting guests to reuse their towels. They're fairly common, and they follow one of these 3 types. A request to save the environment. It will say something like, "Save the environment, use your towel more than once." Or a request to consider future generations in that, make sure our children have a good place to live, use your towel more than once. And then an attempt to extort cooperation, help us save the environment or make the world a better place, use your towel more than once. What the cards never say is that the majority of guests do reuse their towels if given the option to. If they hang them on the shower or on the bathtub thing, they'll use them again if they're not taken away to the laundromat. So in 2007, Cialdini conducted a study where he had hotels put 4 cards out. The first read, "Help save the environment," with the subtext being a respect for nature. And the second was, "Help save resources for our future generations," with the subtext being the importance of, thinking of the future. And the third said, "Partner with us to save the environment," which was a subtext to cooperate with the hotel. And the final card read, "Join with your fellow citizens to save the environment." And it included the citation that the majority of people reuse their towels if they have the option. Being the subtext with that was join us. We're all doing it anyway, which functionally gives people permission. And the results were that the fourth option, the social norm message, increased towel reuse by a mean of 34%. So a mean of 1/3 more reuse. So looking at that, so Cialdini said, this suggests that a clear way to increase conservation activity is by trumpeting the true levels of conservation efforts that are going unrecognized. So, ever the social scientist, I had to conduct a mini experiment of my own. Sick of seeing recyclable soda cans and plastic water bottles and endless reams of paper in the garbage after a big staff faculty meeting, I hung a sign that read, most people prefer to recycle if they can. Here are the receptacles. Join with us. Because, we think we're really green in academia when we're not any more green than any place else. So the results were great. And I take a responsibility to hang those signs and put the receptacles out every time we have a big thing like that. And of course, someone still has to encourage compliance, and someone still has to make sure the stuff gets in the right spots, which I'm happy to do because I think it's validating to human nature, And then someone has to schlep the stuff to the recycling center. Now the young men who take care of the facilities do that. But anyway, it's a small price to pay.